Ruinart message about the Passion of Saint Maurice and his companions, martyrs.
Long ago, Lawrence Surius published the Acts of Saint Maurice and his companions under the name of Saint Eucherius, Bishop of Lyons. However, these acts were so inconsistent that scholars considered them false and fabricated. Although slightly improved versions existed in Mauricii's work, they were still so altered that they couldn't be attributed to Eucherius of Lyons. As a result, discerning individuals were troubled that the genuine acts of such illustrious martyrs were either lost, or so corrupted that they deserved no trust. Nonetheless, these long-sought acts were finally discovered by Reverend Father Peter Francis Schifflet, a priest of the Society of Jesus, in an ancient manuscript from the famous Jura monastery. He published them in the first part of the illustrated work of Paulinus. We present the same edition compared to several old manuscripts, one of which is a relic from the Fawcett Library dating back around 900 years. Moreover, Eucherius' name was indifferently prefixed to both the interpolated and genuine acts in the manuscripts, though more rarely to the genuine ones. This is the same Eucherius letter to Silvius or Salvius, which we found attached to the genuine acts in a single manuscript from the Royal Library. Since this manuscript is of excellent quality, and was also used by Schifflet, we retained it and present it accurately compared to several manuscripts. Eucherius, the author of this passion, presided over the Church of Lyons at the beginning of the 5th century. If you desire more information about him, besides those who compiled the catalogues of ecclesiastical writers, you may consult Schifflet in the Illustrated Paulinus, Part 1, Chapter 14 and following, where he argues that Eucherius was the only one to have led the Church of Lyons. On the contrary, Theophilus Reinaldus, in the list of saints of Lyons, and Cardinal Baronius, who previously argued the opposite, Mabillon, in the notes to the life of Saint Consortia, and other learned men acknowledged two bishops named Eucherius of Lyons. The elder, a contemporary of Hilary of Arles, praised by him in the sermon about Saint Honoratus, died in the year 454. The younger, mentioned in the life of Saint Caesarius of Arles, is said to have signed the Second Council of Orange, which took place in the year 529. Moreover, it seems that the Gallican Fathers used the account of Eucherius in composing the office that was read on the feast day of these martyrs. This seems certain from the Gothic Missal, a passage of which we will describe below. Indeed, this appears to be the Passion, which Saint Avitus, Bishop of Vienne, in the homily he gave about these martyrs, testifies to have been read according to custom. What is more fully detailed in Eucherius's account, Avitus expresses in a few words in the fragment of the same homily that remains to us. He acknowledges that these martyrs, whom he calls the Felix Legion, were decimated once and again by lot, and finally completely consumed. But the entire fragment must be presented, which was copied from the oldest parchment sheets of the Theban library by the very devoted scholar of sacred antiquity, Jacobus Sermond. These sheets, now kept in the Royal Library, are affirmed by the most skilled men who examine them to have been written while Avitus was still alive, or shortly after his death. The title of the aforementioned homily is as follows: spoken in the Basilica of the Saints of Agaunum, at the renovation of the monastery or the Passion of the Martyrs. The proclamation of the Felix army, in whose gathering no one perished and no one escaped. When the unjust death of the holy martyrs was judged as if it were the justice of fate, it was said that being scattered over the field twice would yield 100-fold fruit from the decimated. With hatred favoring prosperity, each was chosen individually until they were all gathered together as the chosen ones. The chosen passion was explained by the obligation of custom. Marius, Bishop of Aventicum, mentions the monastery of Agaunum multiple times, especially in his chronicle in the year 515, during the consulship of Florentius and Anthemius. He notes that the monastery of Agaunum was built by King Sigismund. This should be understood as referring to its renovation. Even if the monastery existed before, it was so enriched by the generosity of this pious prince that he can rightly be called its founder. Furthermore, even if the names of most of these martyrs are unknown, their memory has always been highly celebrated in the Church. This is evident not only from what we have produced but also from other ancient authors, who celebrated them under the name of the Holy Achaunensians, from the place of their martyrdom, or the Theban Legion. Gregory of Tours calls them the Felix Legion in Book 1 of the Glory of the Martyrs, Chapter 75, where he reports that King Sigismund of the Burgundians enriched the Agaunum church abundantly with lands and other resources, and established daily singing there. The same author, in the following chapter, recounts some miracles of these same martyrs. In Book 10 of History, Gregory of Tours says he found the relics of the blessed Achaunensians in the main church of Tours, where he presided, and also in the Basilica of St. Martin. In honor of these martyrs, Venantius Fortunatus composed the 15th poem of Book 2, and in Book 8, Poem 4, he lists them among the most celebrated martyrs, calling them the Felix Legion of Agaunum. From this, it can be inferred that these martyrs were commonly known as the Felix Legion in ancient times. This conjecture is supported by Saint Avitus in the place mentioned above, where they are called the Felix army. I'll skip mentioning Walafrid Strabo and the numerous other authors from various times who celebrated the martyrs of Agaunum. However, it's important to highlight the testimony of the ancient Gallican liturgy, specifically from the Gothic Gallican Missal. This was published by Joseph Maria Thomasius and our own Jean Mabillon in Book 3 of the Gallican liturgy, using a manuscript written in square letters around 900 years ago. In this missal, number 64 contains the Mass of Saint Maurice and his companions, which includes the narrative of their history, likely taken from Eucherius. This will become clear when comparing both texts. To make this easier, let's present the entire preface, known as the Immolation of the Mass. Truly it is right and just for us to give thanks to you, Holy Lord, Almighty Father, Eternal God. For you, Lord, recalled the Theban legion, destined for the punishment of your people, by the sudden grace of your command. So they chose to be killed with diligent devotion rather than be satiated with the blood of Christians. With your assistance, they did not hesitate to bear the burden of persecution, bowing their necks to their persecutors. And when the enemy's rage decreed that the people of God should perish by the insistence of enumeration, he was taken up first, who by the anticipation of martyrdom became the first fruits. A clamor arises in the camps, the valor of fighting is scorned, and a strenuous contention over the assumption of martyrdom is stirred. The people of God are pierced by the sword, the blood of the innocent is shed, and faith is kept unblemished. Thus, Lord, you protect your soldiers, ensuring neither patience was lacking in their suffering nor constancy in their confession. Among the blessed battles and blessed contests, the glorious confession deserved more to be separated from the company of comrades than for the executioner's hand to boast. For the whole people of God were burning with such fervent faith and eagerness, that if the persecution of the body were delayed, the devotion of suffering would proceed. For the constancy of the people was so great, and enemies could neither find anything to destroy in their rage nor leave anything glorious behind to perish. That holy place of the Agaunensians became a sanctuary for the present and a protection for the future through the intercession of the martyrs, consecrated by a wave of blood and the presence of precious bodies. Hence, rightly to you, Lord, etc., in the collections, these holy martyrs of Agaunum are called. This shows that the veneration of these martyrs in our Gaul is ancient, as our ancestors held them in high esteem. Under the name of Saint Maurice, 2 metropolitan churches, Vienne and Tours, as well as 2 cathedral churches, Angers and Mirepoix, are dedicated to God. Among the old churches that once existed in the city of Reims, the title of Saint Maurice is recorded. It is remembered by Sonatius and Lando, bishops of the same city, in their wills, according to Marlatus in Volume 1 of Metropolis Romensis. Less is said about the number of these martyrs. The liturgy, praised by the people, designates them. They are said to have been 6,600 according to the admonition, which is called the preface by ancient custom. It goes like this: Let us beseech the mercy of Almighty God on this feast day of 6,600 martyrs, dearest brothers, so that he who granted the glory of martyrdom to such a people may also grant to us. That number seems to be mentioned, because Eucherius said that the legion consisted of 6,600 men at that time. Moreover, the author of the life of Saint Romanus, abbot of Jura, who was a contemporary of Romanus himself and flourished at the end of the 5th century, also says there were as many Agaunensian martyrs. Such a massacre of soldiers was unprecedented. I will provide a single example from Dio Cassius in the life of Galba, where this author reports that 7,000 Praetorian soldiers were killed, and the rest were decimated. As for the names of these martyrs, except for those listed by Eucherius, they are entirely unknown to us. Most people, however, add Innocent and Vitalis to the Eucheriani. They are mentioned in the oldest martyrologies, and in the Gregorian sacramentary from the Corby manuscript of Rotaldus, as noted by our Hugo Monardus in his notes on page 180. Similarly, they are mentioned in the ancient manuscript of the Metropolitan Church of Reims and some others. Certainly, Ordricus Vitalis reports in Book 13 of his ecclesiastical history that he was named after this holy martyr Vitalis. He says, "The name Vitalis was given to me instead of an English name, which was deemed unpleasant by the Normans, borrowed from one of the companions of Saint Maurice the martyr, whose martyrdom was celebrated at that time." Various churches also celebrate other martyrs from the same legion, who might have been absent from the army at that time or had already been martyred before that general massacre. Gregory of Tours in Book 1 of the Glory of the Martyrs, chapter 62, says that 50 of them were martyred in Cologne, where the basilica was formerly called the Church of the Holy Golden Ones. The martyrologies commonly mention Garion and 318 others, who, according to Adu, are said to be from the Legion of Saint Maurice, martyred on October 10 in the same city. Molossus the martyr, whom Gregory in the following chapter writes was buried in the town of Bertoun with Victor the martyr, is believed by some to be from the Theban legion. On October 10, Eucherius confuses him with Garion, stating, "In the city of Cologne, Saint Garion the martyr, also called Molossus, with 318 others, who, etc." The martyrs of Turin, Octavius, Adventitius, and Soluter, are commonly counted among them. Saint Maximus of Turin gave 2 homilies about them, which are found in Volume 5 Part 1 of the Library of the Fathers. They are also praised by Eucherius of Ticinum in his first poem. There are other famous martyrs in various cities of Italy, such as Maximinus in Milan, Maurice, George, and Tiberius in Pinerolo, Sebastian and Alvarius in Fasano in Liguria, and Alexander in Bergamo, about whom Eucherius has written extensively. If we believe Notcar and others, there were also female martyrs in that legion. Notcar mentions Regula, who, along with her brother Felix, endured various tortures and was beheaded on September 11. He also reported more about the Virgin Verena on the first day of the same month. Others who were martyred elsewhere are frequently mentioned in martyrologies and specific church records, but we do not have the time to discuss them all in detail. I never intended to defend as certain or unquestionable those stories about these martyrs that some authors have narrated without legitimate foundation. However, to question the martyrdom of that renowned legion, which is supported by such authoritative and ancient testimonies, is not the attitude of a sincere person, nor of someone who, rejecting all bias, loves to embrace the truth wherever it shines. The ancient and recent Latin martyrologies commemorate the feast of Saint Maurice and his companions on September 22, but I could not find any mention of them among the Greeks. The Maurice they commemorate with 70 soldier companions on February 21 is entirely different from our Maurice, and aside from their names, they have almost nothing in common. Our Maurice suffered in Gaul with his whole legion, while the other Maurice suffered in Apamea in Syria. After his son Photinus was sent ahead to receive the martyr's palm, he endured unbearable tortures with his companions for 10 days and nights, and then died with them in prayer. This Maurice the martyr is praised by Theodoret in his 8th sermon on the cure of Greek afflictions, and his complete acts are found in Simeon Metaphrasts on February 21 according to the Bollandists. Cardinal Baronius dates the Passion of the Agonensian martyrs to the year 297, but we believe it should be rather attributed to the beginning of the reign of Emperors Diocletian and Maximian. The year 286 holds significance, because Maximian Herculeus, whom Diocletian had appointed to share imperial power the previous year, was stationed in Gaul with his army. The learned Belusius notes this in his commentary on Lactantius' booklet, on the deaths of the persecutors. However, it is possible that the martyrdom of these saints could have occurred in the following years. Agaunum, the site of this massacre, has since been revered by Christians for the memory of these great martyrs, and the notable monastery built there, which is known today as Saint Maurice. This site is located in the Diocese of Sion at the foot of Mount St. Bernard. Initially, the monastery was established under a private rule, but it later came under the Benedictine monks, and eventually the Augustinian canons regular. Mabillon demonstrates that this monastery existed before the year 515 in Volume 1 of the Acts of the Saints of the Benedictine Order, page 568. It was endowed and perhaps restored by Sigismund, king of the Burgundians, but not originally constructed by him. This is confirmed by the title of a fragment of Avitus of Vienne's homily mentioned earlier. The former fame of this monastery is evident from its status as a model for other establishments, especially for the practice of continuous psalm singing, known as perpetual praise. This practice of continuous singing in monasteries, adopted from the Greek Acoameti monks, was once common in many Benedictine monasteries, as proven by old charters published in various collections. More information about this custom can be found in Mabillon's preface to the second part of the 4th century Benedictine Annals, numbers 204 and following.
Saint Eucherius, Bishop of Lyons. The Passion of the Martyrs of Agaunum, Saints Maurice and his companions. From the Acts of the Martyrs, by Theodoric Runard.
To the most blessed Lord in Christ, Bishop Salvius from Eucherius. I am sending you the account of our martyr's passion. I was concerned that such a glorious martyrdom might be forgotten over time if neglected. Therefore, I sought the truth from reliable sources, particularly from those who confirmed that Saint Isaac, the Bishop of Geneva, knew the order of the Passion as it was told. I believe he had received this account from the most blessed Bishop Theodore, a man from an earlier time, while others from various places and provinces offer gifts of gold, silver and other items to honor and serve the saints. We respectfully offer you these writings. We hope for intercession for all sins and perpetual protection for my patrons in the future. Remember us also in the presence of the Lord, always adhering to the duties of the saints, Holy Lord, and most deservedly blessed brother.
Passion of the Martyrs of Agaunum.
We honor the passion of the holy martyrs who illuminate Agaunum with their glorious blood, recounting their deeds with the same faith by which their martyrdom has been passed down to us. Through successive narrations, the memory of this event has not been lost to oblivion. Each martyr is honored by the places or distinguished cities that possess them, and rightly so, for they gave their precious lives for the supreme God. But how much more reverence should be given to the sacred place of Agaunum, where thousands of martyrs were said to have been slaughtered for Christ. Now, let us speak of the very cause of this most blessed passion. Under Maximian, who ruled the Roman Republic together with Diocletian, the people of the martyrs were torn apart or killed across various provinces. Maximian, consumed by greed, lust, cruelty and other vices, was devoted to the abominable rites of the pagans, and profane towards the God of heaven. He had armed his impiety to extinguish the name of Christianity. Anyone who dared to profess the worship of the true God at that time was seized for torture or death by the scattered troops of soldiers. It was as if a holiday had been declared for barbarian peoples, as he entirely stirred arms against religion. At that same time, there was a legion of soldiers in the army called the Theban legion. This legion, consisting of 6,600 men, had come to assist Maximian from the regions of the east. These men were valiant in warfare and noble in virtue, but even more noble in faith, fighting with fortitude for the emperor and with devotion for Christ. Even under arms, they did not forget the command of the gospel, rendering unto God what was God's, and unto Caesar what was Caesar's. When they, like the rest of the soldiers, were assigned to persecute Christians, they alone dared to refuse the ministry of cruelty, and declared they would not obey such orders. Maximianus was not far away, resting and weary from his journey near Octodurum, when messengers reported to him that this legion had rebelled against royal orders and halted in the narrow pass of Agaunum. He flew into a rage fueled by indignation. Before I recount the rest, it seems necessary to describe the location. Agaunum is about 60 miles from the city of Geneva and 14 miles from the head of Lake Geneva, into which the Rhone flows. The place itself is located in a valley among the Alpine peaks. For those traveling there, a difficult, rough, and narrow path opens up. The Rhone, hostile as it is, leaves a scarcely passable embankment along the Rocky Mountains base for travelers. Once the narrow pass is overcome, a not insignificant plain suddenly opens up among the mountain cliffs. The Holy Legion had settled there. Thus, as we mentioned earlier, when Maximianus learned of the Theban legion's response, he, burning with impulsive wrath over the neglected orders, commanded every 10th man of that legion to be killed by the sword, so that the rest, terrified by fear, would more easily submit to royal commands. He then reinforced his orders, decreeing that the remaining soldiers be forced into the persecution of Christians. When the repeated warning reached the Thebans and they understood that they were again being ordered to carry out profane executions, an outcry and tumult arose throughout the camp. Many proclaimed that they would never yield to such sacrilegious tasks. They would always detest the profane idols and dedicate themselves to the worship of the sacred and divine religion. They would worship the one God of eternity. It was better to face the worst than to betray the Christian faith. When Maximianus learned of this, more bloodthirsty than any beast, he returned to his usual cruelty and ordered that once again every 10th man be put to death, and that the rest be compelled to carry out the rejected orders. When these commands were again brought to the camp, the men chosen by lot as the 10th were separated and killed. Meanwhile, the rest of the soldiers encouraged each other through mutual conversation to persist in such a noble cause. The greatest encouragement for faith at that time came from Saint Maurice, who, according to tradition, was the senior officer of his legion. Along with Eucherius, the army leader, and Candidus, a military senator, Maurice inspired and advised each individual in their faith. He drew on the examples of fellow martyrs, urging everyone to be willing to die for the sacrament of Christ and divine laws if necessary, and to follow their comrades who had already ascended to heaven. These blessed men were already burning with the glorious desire for martyrdom. Inspired by these leaders, they sent a message to Maximian, who was still consumed with madness, saying, "We are your soldiers, Emperor, but we freely confess, we are also servants of God. We owe you military service, but to him, we owe our innocence. We receive our wages for labor from you, but from him, we receive the beginning of life. We cannot follow you as our leader to the extent that we deny God, our true leader and yours as well, whether you like it or not. If we are not forced into such horrid deeds that offend him, we will continue to obey you as we have done up to now. Otherwise, we will obey him rather than you. We offer our hands against any enemy, but we consider it a crime to stain them with the blood of the innocent. These right hands know how to fight against the wicked and enemies. They do not know how to tear apart the pious and citizens. We remember that we take up arms for our fellow citizens rather than against them. We have always fought for justice, for piety, and for the safety of the innocent. These have been the rewards of our dangers so far. We have fought for faith, but how can we keep faith with you if we do not show it to our God? We first swore an oath to the divine sacraments, then we swore an oath to the royal sacraments. You need not believe that we will keep the second if we break the first. You order Christians to be sought out for punishment by us. Now, you don't need to look for others. You have us here, confessing God the Father, the Creator of all, and His Son, Jesus Christ, whom we believe is God. We have seen our fellow workers and companions in dangers and labors, with their blood sprinkled on us, slaughtered by the sword. Yet we did not weep or grieve for the deaths of these most holy comrades and the funerals of our brothers. Instead, we praised and followed them with joy, because they were considered worthy to suffer for their Lord God. And now, not even this last necessity of life has driven us to rebellion. Not even the utmost despair, which is strongest in dangers, has armed us against you, Emperor. Look, we hold arms, but we do not resist because we prefer to die rather than to kill, and we would much rather perish innocently than live guiltily. If you decide anything further against us, if you order anything else, if you bring anything upon us, we are ready to face fire, torture, and the sword. We confess we are Christians. We cannot persecute Christians." When Maximian heard such things and saw their minds steadfast in the faith of Christ, despairing that their glorious constancy could be recalled, he decreed that all should be killed with one judgment, and he ordered the matter to be carried out by surrounding soldiers. When they came to the most blessed legion, the impious drew their swords against the holy ones, who did not refuse to die out of love for life. Thus they were slaughtered everywhere by swords, not even protesting or resisting, but laying down their arms and offering their necks to their persecutors, exposing their throats or unprotected bodies to their persecutors. They were not elated by their own multitude or the defense of their arms to try to assert the cause of justice by the sword, but only remembering this, that they confessed him who was led to slaughter without protesting and did not open his mouth like a lamb. They themselves, like a flock of the Lord's sheep, allowed themselves to be torn apart by attacking wolves. The earth was covered there by the prostrate bodies of the pious in death, and streams of precious blood flowed. What madness ever, without war, caused such a great slaughter of human bodies? What kind of savagery has ever decreed, from its own judgment, that so many should perish at once, whether guilty or not? The crowd did not succeed in preventing the just from being punished, since what the crowd transgresses usually goes unpunished. Thus, by the cruelty of this most savage tyrant, that holy people who despised present things for the hope of the future were afflicted. That truly angelic legion was killed, which, as we believe, now praises the Lord God of hosts, together with the legions of angels forever in heaven. However, Victor the martyr was neither of the same legion nor a soldier, but a veteran of an already completed military service. While he was traveling, he suddenly came upon those who were joyfully feasting on the spoils of the martyrs. When invited to join the feast, he learned the reason for the celebration from those rejoicing. He detested both the guests and the feast, and fled. When questioned whether he too might be a Christian, he responded that he was a Christian and always would be, and was immediately killed by those who attacked him. He was united in the same place with the other martyrs, not only by death but also by honor. These are the names of the martyrs known to us: the most blessed Maurice, Eucherius, Candidus, and Victor. The other names are unknown to us, but they are written in the book of life. From this same legion, it is said that the martyrs Ursus and Victor, who suffered at Solothurn, were also from. Solothurn is a fort above the Ra river, not far from the Rhine. It is also worth noting the fate that befell the cruel tyrant Maximian afterward. When he plotted to kill his son-in-law Constantine, who was then ruling, by laying traps, his deceit was discovered. Captured at Marseille, he was soon strangled and met his end with this most terrible punishment, ending his wicked life with a fitting death. Indeed, the bodies of the most blessed martyrs of Agaunum, after many years of suffering, were revealed to Saint Theodore, the bishop of that place. When a basilica was being built in their honor, next to a vast cliff, a remarkable miracle occurred. Among the craftsmen invited to work on the basilica, there was one man who was still known to be a pagan. One Sunday, while the others had left to observe the festivities, this worker stayed alone in the building. Suddenly, the holy ones appeared to him in a bright light in that secluded place. The worker was seized and stretched out for punishment or torment. Seeing the crowd of martyrs, he was beaten and rebuked for either missing church on a Sunday, or daring to undertake the holy work as a pagan. The saints did this so mercifully that the worker, alarmed and terrified, asked to be saved and immediately became a Christian. I must also mention another miracle among the saints that is equally clear and well known. The wife of Quintius, a distinguished and honorable man, was so paralyzed that she couldn't use her feet. She asked her husband to take her to Agaunum, a long journey. When she arrived, carried by the hands of the servants of the basilica, she returned to the inn on foot. Having been healed from her paralysis, she now proclaims her miracle. I believe these two wonders should be included in the Passion of the Saints. However, many other miracles occur there through the power of the Lord, whether in casting out demons or in other healings.